This has to be one of the most frequently asked questions in the past couple of weeks for me. When is the Rolex bubble going to burst? But here's the thing, it already did. Right, in this video, I will quickly explain to you what the Rolex bubble actually is that everyone is talking about, and then I will show you with the help of 5 examples with specific watch models why exactly the bubble has already burst. And lastly, there will be a very cautious prognosis for the future regarding the price development and how to, you could be acting accordingly. And this can go down with a little disclaimer, of course. I love watches, I love Rolex. And no matter how hard I will try, I will never not be at least a little bit subjective, but I will try my best to stay as objective as possible here to give the most information I can offer. As always, this is by no means a guide to invest or anything like that, but I am sure you'll be very well informed after watching this video. Let's start with the Rolex bubble in general. And I know that a lot of you out there who are already well aware of the Rolex bubble and what it is can skip forward. I will put the timestamp down below or up here somewhere so you can go directly to the next part. But I know that a lot of new people are here too. So let me explain the bubble to you very quick. So what is a bubble, or more specifically a speculative bubble, and how does it usually develop? A bubble is basically the situation when the price of a specific good or commodity, like stocks or sneaker, Pokemon cards, or whatever, including watches, of course, lies way above its actual intrinsic worth. And I know that intrinsic worth is a bit tricky to understand. I mean, how would you describe the intrinsic worth of a specific stock? But let me give you another example that makes it easier to understand and explain. Let's assume there's a company that makes cars, and now this company developed an entirely new technology, let's say a technology that makes it possible to have a reach of over 10,000 kilometers per battery within an electric car, and it recharges within 5 minutes. Now, this company has a huge advantage compared to its competitors because, it can now offer something everyone wants and needs, but nobody else can deliver. So what do you think will happen with the sales and profits of this company? Exactly. Both are going to rise. Those who are now buying stocks of that company can be more or less sure that its stock price is going to rise sooner or later if we assume that this technology is working, etc. And so that means that the intrinsic worth or value of this stock has now risen. There's actual additional value present. But now I would like us to have a look at the typical course of a bubble from start to finish to explain simultaneously what we mean by intrinsic worth. At first, there can be speculations that there really is a car manufacturer that is able to produce a car with a reach of over 10K per charge within a 5-minute recharge time, but only that, a rumor or speculation and nothing more. So what happens now? Funnily enough, the same as when it was actually true. People are speculating or betting on the fact that stock prices for that company are going to rise, but not because there is actual proof or a real equivalent value. So therefore, the intrinsic value or worth doesn't change. As of now, the company hasn't changed and offers no additional value, if we just go for the speculation. What follows is the next step of the bubble course. Since the stock price has already started to rise, oftentimes about 10% or more within a short period of time, people start buying for a whole different reason. They now no longer buy because there are speculations that they heard about that they may or may not be true. They are buying stocks because there's already a rise in value and they simply bet on this trend to keep existing. And this is where everything is starting to go into shit, because now the value of that stock is exploding and it is escalating to the point at which people are no longer brave enough to pay the actual price for it. And then as soon as people are starting to get unsure about it, since the stock price is no longer rising as fast, they also start to get scared. Those who hold onto their stocks might sell now, and those who are thinking about buying might change their mind. And this exact effect is going to intensify, maybe slowly at first, but it gets stronger and stronger with time. Now prices are starting to crash since people start to panic. Those who bought at the highest price wanting to mitigate their loss as much as possible and selling everything now. Oftentimes prices are seen to recover a bit though before they ultimately crash. There's one thing that's really important here though. As long as there is an intrinsic value or worth, prices are never going to be just zero. It's just normalizing to the point where, in the long run, it comes closer to the average or mean intrinsic value, as you can see on the dotted line on the image here. But what about watches? Right, we talked about the stock price example, but what about watches? For that, I want you to take a look at the following 5 value pattern of the 5 most hyped watches to check whether or not we can see a bubble pattern and whether or not it has burst, so we can, at the end of this, give a cautious prognosis for the future. The images I'm going to show you are taken from a very good article I found online. The page is called uhrencosmos.com and is written by Gisbert Brunner, which I'm sure some of you already know. Other images are taken from Chrono24. Okie dokie, let's start with my husband's wedding watch, the very popular and totally crashed Rolex Pepsi. As you can see on this image, in February, people were willing to pay up to 30,000 for this watch. That is 3 times its retail price. Now, only a few months later, its current value is around 24,000, according to Chrono24, which is a bit over, 20% less. But I would also like to add that since prices have started to drop so rapidly, the prices on Chrono24 itself are still way too high than what they are in reality. I don't sell watches myself, but I have talked to pre-owned watch sellers, so I know that as a seller, right now you would get about 22,000 when selling. As a private individual, you would get around 19 or 20,000. So this means there's an overall devaluation of almost 35% within 4 to 5 months. But my next example is even more impressive in terms of numbers. Okay, so let's look at the second watch, the very Rolexy yellow gold Daytona with the green dial. This one is no joke, I'm telling you. With a retail price of about 30,000, people back in February were ready to pay over 140,000 for this watch. And I know for a fact that it actually was bought for that price, since I talked to a seller who, was able to sell it for that one. According to Chrono24, its current price is around 95,000, but realistically, watch dealers are selling this for about 80,000, whereas a private seller would get about 70 to 75,000, which means that the price for this watch has almost halved. But it also means that if you bought it for 140k a couple of months back, you now lost about 70,000. The third watch we're going to look at is seriously one of the most hyped watches ever. On top of that, Patek Philippe has stopped producing this watch just last year and people went even more crazy. Of course, I'm talking about the Nautilus. According to this image on uhrencosmos.com, its peak was at about 190,000, but currently we are at about 130,000, which is a deduction of about 60,000, so almost a third of the peak price. If we take a look at Chrono24, of those stats, we can see them depict about the same, but I have to honestly say I couldn't get much info from watch dealers or other sellers regarding recently sold or bought Nautiluses, but as I've mentioned before, prices on Chrono24 tend to be a bit higher, so I think you would, sell your Nautilus right now, get about 120,000 if it's in good condition. And if we talk about hyped up watches, we can not mention the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, of course. It's been kind of a Cinderella story, this one, starting as the ugly duckling or shelf warmer until it became one of the most popular watches we've known so far. I remember back in 2018, Kai was looking at the Royal Oak and the AD even offered him a discount on it. But things started to, quickly change around 2020, and in, I think, 2021, I know that he was being completely ignored by that specific AD when he was asking for that watch. Anyways, you can totally see that kind of development being represented in that image, specifically for reference number 15202, which peaked at 120,000 in March, but is now back to about 100,000. And again, I know for a fact that this exact watch was being sold for about 80,000 to someone else, which was, to be fair, one of the cheapest offers currently, but I think 90,000 would be the max you would get for it right now. So that makes a loss of about 25%, going from 120 to 90,000. But let's take a look at the last example that I think is best to represent the whole schlamassel. My last example is the watch index in general. On a site called Watch Charts, which I have taken this image from, we can see 30 of the most popular watch models and their average resale value over the past couple of years. And I think that makes for a great starting point to look at the overall development of the watch market. According to this chart, the average price from about 23,000 to 17,685, which is about 24% less. And I mean, I don't know about you, but if I put these two images next to each other, this and the example of a bubble, I would say the similarities are pretty obvious, right? Okay, well, let's talk about the future then. I said this in the beginning and I want to repeat myself here because I believe this is very important. This is not meant to be an investment advisory type of video. God, no. No one should look at this and either panic buy or, sell or watch just because some random girl on the internet talks about this. Yes, I did inform myself to give you the best information possible, but one thing I can't, and I believe no one really is able to do, is predict the future. Duh. But what I can do is give you my personal assessment of what I think might be very likely to happen. So let's quickly get back to the intrinsic worth of watches. What is the intrinsic worth of watches? If you think about it for a bit, you will quickly understand that watches don't exhibit such technological advances such as, e-car batteries that last 10 times as long, or movements that are even more accurate if we are sticking to that example. So is there no intrinsic worth in watches? No worries, there is one, of course. And it is also the type of worth that could be watches' biggest advantage, I believe, because with watches, it's the highly emotional component that connects the buyer to a watch. Yeah. I know everyone justifies an expensive, 10K watch more or less with the investment argument, but still. Whenever I talk to fellow watch lovers, there's always this one thing that stands out to me. We buy those watches mainly with an emotional attachment behind the purchase decision. We buy them because of the feeling we expect when wearing them, or maybe because it reminds us of something or someone, or you just want to mark a specific milestone with it. That is the intrinsic value of watch, even though you can't really put a number to it. So what happened to that intrinsic watch value over the past couple of years? Did it rise? If you were to ask me, I would say it definitely has. No matter which way you look at it, since about 2017, more and more people are drawn to watches and luxury watches. Thanks to people on online platforms that talk about watches, this little niche has become bigger and bigger, up until the point I'm no longer sure I can even consider this a niche anymore. But at the same time, there have been constant increases in prices from manufacturers of about 5 to 10% too, which drive up the value of watches, of course. What definitely happened is the fact that prices completely exploded way above their value around summer 21. Up until spring this year, what happened then was definitely out of the ordinary and completely bonkers. Price spikes up to 100% within months are never sustainable. But that begs the question, have we hit rock bottom now? I very hesitantly want to say yes and no, because I think this is what happened the past couple of weeks and months. Lots of people have bought watches with money they did not really have. I'm also sure that 99% of those didn't went for it to make a quick profit, but they were, looking to buy their dream watch, even though it might not have been the right time for them yet. And don't get me wrong, this is meant to be judgmental. I myself did that a couple of times too, so I know where it's coming from. But I also believe that those people started to panic when prices started to stumble, and they quickly parted ways with their watch again. And there are also just those people that I know of which simply sold off their watches they weren't wearing as much to slim down the collection, since they weren't actively wearing half of the stuff that they had. So now people in general tend to sell way less watches now, since the ones they own are the ones they really enjoy. And in case someone is selling their watch, it is mostly not out of panic, but simply find another watch they want more, with it leading to a bit more of a stabilization with the prices as of right now. So all in all, I would say that yes, there was definitely a bubble, and yes, it has already burst too. Okay, so what are you supposed to do now in case you're unsure? In case you bought a watch with money you could actually use for something more crucial, vital, I would and will always advise against that. Not going for the watch, of course, but the mistake isn't because of the present, but because of the past. So lesson learned, I guess. But if you're really into watches and love these silly little things on your wrist as much as I do, then I would say you can just continue as before. Buy the ones you enjoy and sell the ones you don't love anymore, so you can get another one that brings you joy again. Simple as that. And that marks the end of this video. Now you should be up to date regarding the Rolex Bubble and prices. Even if prices should continue to drop, I'm still excited, because that could mean that some of the watches I have been eyeing for a long time might, finally come into reach again. But yeah, we'll see. Now it's your turn. What do you think about all this? Do you agree with me on this? bubble already bursting, or do you have a different theory? Let me know in the comments down below. I cannot wait to read through everything and see what you guys have to say and think about this. As always, if you have enjoyed this video, I'd be very happy if you give this a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos, I recommend subscribing to my channel. So I will see you in my next one. Until next time, bye.